both. So ensure that you are on top of matters. Have a helper at hand. Let's return to the studio and get started with our Kickstarter and look at what is being described as the paradox of ineffective youth political participation in the country and what value is there for the youth in political and democratic spaces. Of course, this discussion comes on the backdrop of developments in the country as the various players position themselves to, well, come to you and ask for votes in 2026 general election. Allow me welcome to the program Teopista Kiiza, Programs Coordinator at the Africa Youth Development Link, and Evelyn Bukirwa, a youth politician from Chiboga District. Ladies, welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
Let me begin with a very general question, one that should offer us an overview of where the youth movement is when it comes to shaping the political landscape in the country. I would have loved the youth coordinator, who's the program coordinator, to begin, but I have a politician with me, Evelyn Bukirwa.
Yes, please.
You are a budding politician in Chiboga District, and I believe as the contestation in the political spaces begins to get aggressive ahead of 2026, what is the place of the youth in this equation called Uganda's politics?
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris. I think, first of all, we need to understand the youth contribution in terms of numbers. Looking at our current population, we have about 75%. 75% being young person below the age of 35. But looking at the current constitution of the Ugandan Parliament, we see we have about only 20%. Only 20% being MPs who are 35 years and below. So I think a huge population, that big proportion of the population requires more representation. So if we want to have the youth voice heard, we need to have more youth participating at different levels. We need to see the current parliament or 2026 and beyond, more youth coming up to take leadership positions, becoming members of parliament, to ensure that at least their voices can be heard. Looking at the current trend, more political organizations are now being formed, and they are all organizing youth to come up and support. But I think personally we have not provided enough preparation to ensure that youth can effectively participate in whatever is happening as we try to shape the outcome of the 2026 general election. I would expect the new formations, political formations, and those pressure groups. Currently we have the DA, the Democratic Alliance. We have previously heard about the Katonga faction formulating into
split of FDC.
The split of FDC. They are all trying to tap into what the youth can provide. So I would expect at this moment to see more political, platforms, youth-led platforms being provided to ensure that at least different youth from different angles can come together, share different opinions at the same platform, and that in a way will facilitate tolerance, because we have had a history of intolerance where
the older
yes,
agree that the youth should come.
Even youth themselves, if they know that this one subscribes to the FDC and another youth is subscribing to the National Unity Platform, they will not listen to each other. They will always have conflicting views. So we have failed as leaders to provide that, a platform where all different youth can come together, share and learn from each other. So moving forward, I think it would be very, very critical at this moment to ensure that such platforms are facilitated and youth are given space so that they can listen to each other in preparation for the 2026 general election.
Okay.
Yes.
Teopista Kiiza, within the aegis of the African Youth Development Link, the political prong is one that I suspect you do not put a lot of attention to, and you're more inclined to want to understand or help the youth in becoming sustainable in terms of livelihoods, but also being participants in the process as unaware section of the population, especially when it comes to their rights and the ability to take up opportunities as and when they come. She speaks about the fact that the ratio of leaders is not commensurate with the ratio of the population. The youth are 75% of the population, yet representation is still poor. It's a whole lot of stuff. I don't know how the Africa Youth Development Link approaches some of these challenges when it comes to the youth equation in the country.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning to our viewers. Yeah, talking about youth participation in this country, in the first place we have to appreciate the context of Uganda as a country. If you look at the context of Uganda, is that you have not had a change in terms of political leadership, especially at the level of the president for for 40 years. And if you look at the population of the young people, they were born in this regime, they've been raised in this regime.
That is right.
And for most of the leaders that shape how they think, how they do things, definitely reflects what is happening generally across the country. So looking at this population of the young people, you would think that whoever it is that wins the youth definitely becomes the winner of an election in a country, because apart from us having 23% of the general population of the country as young people, you have them 60% and above as the highest if you look at the voters register. Yes. So you would expect that youth would make influence in terms of their numbers, in terms of their opinions, in terms of their issues being at the forefront of the political discourse, but that is not happening. But then secondly, within the context, what we have to appreciate is that we have a good structure as a country as such that supports youth participation. Whereas we might not see a lot that happen at the national level, we have a whole structure right from the village level that provides for special interest group representation. You have youth councillors at the district level. You have a whole structure of the National Youth Council that stems right from the village to the national level. So you have that structure in place. You have the Uganda Students Association. Yes. So we have these formations. But now the challenge comes with the big man syndrome, let me call it that way, is that you will have these political parties or politicians that have access to resources use youth for their own benefit. If we look at this population of young people that we have talked about, most of them are unemployed. Our politics has been highly commercialized. For one to be able to sail through the politics of this country is that you will have to have a lot of money in you, or you will have to have a godfather or a godmother that has to invest in you. Yeah. So with such, if you look at the high level of unemployment, then definitely youth will be used by politicians. But then we have a category of young people that are trying out their level best. We have those that are doing activism both online. We have those who really stand up and speak about their issues. Right. But the context that I have talked about, where you have a lot of young people being swayed away by politicians who have access to resources, by political parties that think that they have the resources, then the likelihood of their issues being taken on becomes really hard. Of this youth population that we talk about, there is quite an interesting number because youth are diverse in nature. So the ones that we see that are actively participating are the elite class, that have access to information, that have access to opportunities and platforms. But then we have a whole group of young people. Last year, the National Planning Authority put those categories of youth at 40%, but the recent census results put them at 50+%. The youth that are not in education, not in school, and not in any training.
They don't know what is going on.
They don't know what's going on. They are just there to be used. They are looking for an opportunity to have what to eat today. So such a young person is very vulnerable to being used by any politician, and that is the highest number of young people that you have in this country. They are looking for what to eat. So for any politician or political party that want to use them to cause violence, you know, to beat up their opponents, they will do that for as long as they are able to get money. There is something that is quite interesting. At one time, there is a guy who has been a phone snatcher. So he snatches people's phones, iPhones and all that. So they asked him, what do you do when you snatch the phones? He was like, when I snatch a phone, I take it to some guy who sells them. And then they were like, how much does he pay you? He pays this guy 100,000. So the guy is able to risk his life at 100,000 shillings for an iPhone someone is going to sell some good money. They're just... They don't have the right information. Yeah, they are looking for survival. We see some of them have wasted themselves in drugs. So that is the category of young people that we need to put our focus on. It is unfortunate that they are being used, but it is upon us as stakeholders to ensure that we are able to reach out to these young people, give them the right information, and encourage them to stand for what is right and for what will pull them out of the situation they are in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That is a very, very poignant revelation. And of course, I do know that within the workings of Chiboga district, the very challenges that she posits are the ones that I'm sure you see in your interaction with many youth in Chiboga. Sure. Do you have a kind of blueprint on how to address some of these challenges as put forward by stakeholders, including the likes of Teopista Kiiza?
Yes, I think one of the ways how we should try to address such challenges, we need to strengthen youth livelihoods, as in most cases, youth are being manipulated politically because they are politically vulnerable. They don't have stable sources of income. They are not sure of how to survive. So we need to organize youth around different livelihoods, ensure that we train, we do the skilling so that they can be able to
start out enterprises.
Yes,
so to speak.
Enterprises that can help them earn some money to facilitate whatever they want to do. In most cases, most of the youth we work with, they have no idea on how to manage themselves. They have families, but they can't even fend for them. They can't afford school fees, they can't afford housing. Some of them are renting, but they can't even afford rent.
The rent, yeah.
Yes. So I think the main problem that youth are facing currently is poverty. We need to address poverty levels among the youth by skilling them and linking them, for example, to sources, financial institutions that can provide credit.
Okay.
Yes.
Allow me to stay with you on that particular issue and juxtapose the currently existent campaigns that are being rolled out by government. And you can list a litany of them. PDM, the Youth Livelihood Program, State House alone has over the years been able to churn out graduates who go and practice tailoring and all these skill sets. I do not know whether it's a case of too little, too late, or is there a mismatch between the skills that are being imparted into many of the youth that we see benefiting from these programs and what they actually need?
Actually, I think in Chiboga where I come from,
apologies, yeah.
It's okay. In Chiboga where I come from, yes, such programs are there, but they are mainly politicized.
Most people,
yes. Yeah. Most people that benefit from such programs, for example, the Youth Livelihood Program, are the people that subscribe to the NRM. Yes. the people that subscribe to the NRM, and youth from different political parties and organizations in most times are left out. They never benefit from such programs. Me, I would expect that such a government program would be holistic, and doesn't exclude people depending on their political affiliations, color, and things like that.
All right.
So, yes, programs are there, but they are being politicized.
Okay.
It's only those that most of the time. It's only those people that subscribe to the ruling party that may benefit. And maybe to add on that, our youth, most of the youth that benefited from the youth livelihood program actually chewed the money. Yes, they did not. Ideally, this program was brought up to ensure that it provides funds to the youth. They go use it, do something, and pay back. But when they took the money, they never paid back.
Interesting. I'll be coming to that question a little bit later. Let me engage at Teopista Kiiza. I'm sure you do understand the frustrations that Ms. Bukirwa does bring out. There are many things happening out there, and when you watch the news and follow closely, one would wonder why there isn't sufficient progress and returns. But that's a question that can be answered depending on what point of view you're coming from. But there's something about the youth themselves and those that get the opportunity to be in spaces where they can shape the political agenda. Are they pushing enough? And this is the best example I think I should be able to share. When you are listening to members of parliament debating on the floor, when the youthful MPs come up to debate issues, what is their grasp of the issues at hand? What are they pushing, and what are the questions they're asking that they want answers to? Are you convinced that the generation that is seeking leadership is up to the task?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Chris. An interesting question over there. So when you see what is happening and what is discussed or legislated, especially in Parliament, is that most times you never get to see a lot of issues of young people being addressed. So first of all, we need to ask a question of, for those that are there, those that are in Parliament and in those spaces, how did they get to those spaces? So definitely when they get to those spaces, they are answerable, or they are pushing for the interest of the person that invested in them. So that is number one. I think you've seen that when it comes to key decisions being made, caucuses are made, and people are influenced. They are told what to say, how to say it. If you don't do it, then we may not support you in the next election. So there is that. But then the other thing comes to the whole issue of mentorship of young people. I keep saying that while I was growing up, while I was in school, I did study civics in primary. And when I got to secondary, I studied political education. And that no longer exists. It no longer exists. Those subjects helped us to become civically conscious at a younger age. But of late, a young person comes from the university and they cannot even interpret or talk about their roles as citizens, their roles and as citizens. So that is one of the challenges that young people face. So some of them find themselves in spaces or voted into these political positions, but without enough capacity for them to express themselves or to express the issues that they would stand for. So that is a challenge that we face as a country. But also the other issue is that, you know, we have a bloated parliament. You know, you have all those numbers of MPs. What chances do you have that, you know, there is a likelihood that these young people or the youthful MPs that are in Parliament will have a chance to talk or express themselves? For some of them, for as long as they go to Parliament, we never get to hear what they say until they come to ask for votes. So the same applies to what happens even at the lower level structures. For what has happened is that my organization and other organizations have been taking lead on developing what is called the National Youth Manifesto. For the National Youth Manifesto is that we realize that most of the politicians and political parties will definitely want the youth vote. So they will come to youth with their manifestos, which they developed from either their offices, and they hardly consulted even these young people. So we decided that let's consult young people, compile their issues, so that as they engage in the electoral process, they are engaging from an issue-based kind of like engagement. So we definitely identify those issues. So the issues that always come through as number one is the issue of unemployment. And they propose kind of like strategies of how they want government to address those issues. Then participation, they've talked about the issue of participation, and always participation, they will always talk about how politics is commercialized, but they will also talk about issues, the issues that have come through, especially for the young women, is sexual violence, especially within political parties. So for a young woman, exploitation. For a young woman to get into that space or to get the card for a certain political party, they will definitely have to ask for something in return. So definitely that hinders their participation, and that is something that has happened across. Recently, when I read in papers, and there was a confession by the NUP woman representative, the MP for Mubende, I'm just forgetting her name. She was confessing that she has received a lot of cases from young women complaining about how they are asked for sexual favors if they benefit from certain positions. So that happens across, and it affects these young women. But there are also issues of health that need to be addressed, young people's access to sexual and reproductive health, and very many other issues. So all those issues affect young people, and we want that as young people engage in the political process, they are well equipped with these issues, and that they are able to put them forward to these politicians who are asking for votes from them or who want to use them. But like we said, how the context is that if someone doesn't have what to eat, they will definitely put the demand for something first before they even can talk about their issues.
All right. Interesting there. Hearing what you say, that cases of sexual exploitation are increasing. The harassment cases are pretty much well documented, but for young ladies to be exploited in order to be able to participate in the activities of political parties is a damning assessment. All right, we're going to have to take a break right now, but when we return, we shall wrap this conversation up and, of course, open up a space for yet again conversations, including the National Action Plan for Health Security. These are all matters that talk to the sections of the population that are critical to national transformation. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. Back, we are talking youth participation in the political spaces and exactly how they can find value in shaping the country's democratic and political path. With me in the studio, Teopista Kiiza, Programs Coordinator at the Africa Youth Development Link, as well as Evelyn Bukirwa, a youth politician from Chiboga. As we wrap this conversation up, I'm going to ask Teopista first. In light of all the challenges that we have listed and the realities that we have agreed are bedeviling the youth movement in this country, there must be a silver lining, one that is clear enough and ought to be the North Star for the youth. How do we go forward?
Yes, so going forward, first of all, I would want to encourage youth to register to vote. Because while they make the numbers, most of them are never on the voters register.
But they are at rallies. They are at rallies,
yes. And because I remember in the previous elections, I think there's a story that ran that 60% of the voters were youth. But the ones that actually registered to vote were 40%. And then when it gets to the voting, still a few of even the 40 that appear on the voter register turn up to cast their vote. So there is someone who is making a decision on your behalf. So I am encouraging you. I think the Electoral Commission is updating the register starting 3rd January. So go to the parishes, take advantage of that process and ensure that you're registered as a voter. Don't let anyone make a decision for you. We have the numbers, but it is unfortunate that our numbers are not speaking on our behalf, that it is other people that are deciding on our behalf. So let's go vote for the leaders that we believe will change the status quo. Then secondly, what I would want to say is that we are living in a world of technology, yeah? And it is the young people that have access or have the skills of using this technology. So let's not allow ourselves to be swayed away by these politicians. Let's use these tools, let's use social media to disseminate the right information, to mobilize young people with issues that concern us. Okay. If unemployment is an issue, let's push it through. Let it be on our agenda come 2026. And then also the other thing that I can speak about is for political parties. Okay, we know that you're targeting young people as your mobilizers. You know, they have the energy, they will create the vibe for you. But aside from that, we are requesting you to put in place programs that mentor these young people.
Internal programs in
in political parties that mentor and train these young people. We've realized that for those that have gotten an opportunity to get into leadership through your structures, that what they are deliberating is not of substance because they lack the leadership skills, the public speaking skills. They are not well versed with the issues. They are not well versed with even the laws, so they cannot legislate really well on the floor of parliament. So we are encouraging you and other stakeholders to really train and also mentor these young people so that when they get into political positions, they are able to represent youth very well.
Evelyn Bukirwa?
Yes, please.
You're up.
Yeah, moving forward, number one, I want to see different actors working together to build capacity of the youth in terms of providing capacity building trainings, providing platforms where they can effectively engage and learn from each other. I also want to see, currently there is a debate on the proposed political and electoral reforms happening. So I want to see that conversation being pushed and supported to ensure that at least nomination fees
are reduced.
Yes, nomination fees are reduced because currently when you look at 3 million, that's a lot of money. An average youth might not afford it.
That is right.
So if it is reduced to around at least 500K, that one is affordable.
Yeah, I have a feeling it should even come to 100,000.
Yeah, but 3 million actually, it's a lot of money, and our youth cannot afford it. And also, in future, I want to see youth representation increased in terms of numbers in Parliament. We want to see to have more seats being left for youth. To be occupied, to ensure that at least more youth can come up on the decision-making table and have their voices heard.
All right. Thank you very much, Evelyn Bukirwa, a youth politician from Chiboga District, for the submissions and very, very useful perspective there. And many thanks to you too, Teopista Kiiza, Programs Coordinator at the African Youth Development Link. That will do it for the Kickstarter. I hope if you are a youth out there and you're hoping 2026 is meaningful for you, go register, but also keep your eye on the political space. We'll be back with more conversations here on Morning at NTV.